St. Helena Federal Training Complex, Virginia, a sprawling facility where tactical protocols meet classroom discipline, where recruits learn to calculate risk in milliseconds. Most contractors fade into the background: logistics coordinators, equipment specialists, instructional support. But Maya Reeves was different, quiet, precise. The kind of person who noticed when a recruit's breathing pattern suggested panic, or when a simulated scenario was about to collapse into genuine danger. For 8 months, she had existed in the margins of the training compound, fixing equipment, organizing scenario materials, observing drills from the perimeter. No one asked her history. No one asked why a woman with her particular understanding of field medicine showed up to work before dawn and stayed until the generators hummed alone in the dark. Her contract was vague. Her clearance was moderate. She was, to most eyes, invisible. Then came Exercise Red Threshold, a 4-day tactical medical simulation designed to stress-test recruits under conditions that mimicked real crisis response. Nothing was supposed to go wrong. Everything did. And in the 13 minutes that followed, Maya's silence broke. 6 recruits would later testify to what they witnessed her do. Their accounts would raise questions that echoed through federal corridors. Who was she? Where had she trained? And why had the Bureau buried every record of her service? This is the story of the woman they called just a contractor, until the moment her past became impossible to ignore. Chapter 1. The Contractor. The fluorescent strips hummed above Maya's head as she restocked the medical simulation kits in Storage Building 7. Outside, November rain hammered the roof in irregular bursts, the kind of weather that made people inside the compound move faster, speak louder, as if urgency could ward off the cold. She worked methodically, each IV line in its sterile pouch, each tourniquet aligned, each cardiac monitor stripped of dust. Her hands moved with economy, no wasted gesture, no hesitation. Someone watching might have noticed that her fingers didn't tremble when she handled trauma shears or airway adjuncts. Most people didn't watch. Most people never looked at her at all. That was how she preferred it. Reeves. The voice belonged to Director Hardin, who appeared in the doorway with the kind of authority that made rain sound quieter. He was tall, graying, the type of administrator who had learned to read people by the way they held tools. "How are the supplies?" "Adequate for the exercise," Maya said without turning. "Assuming standard simulation parameters." That's what I wanted to talk about. Hardin stepped inside, his footsteps careful on the concrete floor. "Red Threshold is being upgraded. Request from the field offices. They want it to involve actual medical response, not just tactical protocol. They want your input." Maya's hands stilled for a fraction of a second. Input meant visibility. Visibility meant questions. "I'm a contractor," she said. "I maintain equipment." "You're more than that." Hardin's tone was gentle, which made it more dangerous. "Your background clearance includes medical credential verification. You've got training that goes beyond standard contractor scope. Whoever vetted you knew something." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were steady, the color of slate after rain. "I do the job I'm contracted to do, which is why I'm asking you to do more." Hardin set a tablet on the shelf beside her. On its screen was a simulation protocol. 12 pages of scenario variables, medical complications, psychological stresses. "Review this. Tell me where it could fail. Tell me where recruits will panic. That's all." "All right," she said, taking the tablet. She didn't say it would be the last routine day of her containment. Chapter 2. Exercise Red Threshold. The scenario began at 0600 on Thursday. Recruits moved through the compound in teams of 3, tactical vests, simulated weapons, communication gear crackling with controlled chaos. Their objective: navigate a collapsed building model, identify casualties, coordinate extraction under time pressure. By design, it was supposed to expose flaws in their decision-making. By accident, it would expose hers. Maya stood at observation point 2, an elevated platform overlooking the training site. From here, she could see 6 recruits, designated Team Delta, moving through the rubble maze. Their leader was a young woman named Carver, sharp-eyed and methodical. The others followed her signals with the kind of trust that came from repetition. The medical simulation facilitator was supposed to be Marcus Chen, an ex-Navy corpsman with 15 years of emergency response experience. Maya had never questioned why he called in sick that morning. She had simply stepped into his role without being asked, because someone had to, and because she already knew what was going to happen. What she didn't know was that the scenario had been modified. Hardin was standing beside her, observing. He didn't acknowledge her, but she felt his attention like weight. Team Delta found the first casualty at Aero 612, a mannequin in a crumpled corridor, rigged to present as a crush injury victim with compromised airway. Carver knelt, assessed, radioed back. Standard protocol, correct response. Then the second casualty appeared, rigged by safety staff, supposed to be stable. But the technician responsible for that station had set the respiratory monitor incorrectly. The signal it transmitted was not stable patient with minor laceration. It was critical respiratory distress, immediate intervention required. Carver read the data. "We've got respiratory compromise," she said into the radio. "Airway intervention needed. Requesting medical support." No one responded. The facilitator station was unmanned. Protocol required an instructor presence. There was none. The recruit's face shifted, not panic yet, but the beginning of it. That was when Maya moved. She was off the observation platform in 3 seconds, crossing the training ground without running but not quite walking either, that particular gait that covered distance like water. Carver saw her approach, and recognition flickered across her face. Contractor. Respiratory compromise. Maya knelt beside the mannequin, her hands already assessing the situation with the precision of someone who had performed this move 1,000 times. Her fingers found the airway adjunct, positioned it with practiced efficiency. "Talk me through your assessment." Carver stammered through her findings. Maya listened, then did something that wasn't in the scenario manual. She placed her own hand on the mannequin's chest, feeling for the subtle vibration of a failing simulator, and said quietly, "In the field, when your equipment lies and your team freezes, your hands have to know what your mind can't confirm. Feel this rhythm, remember it. This is what compensation looks like just before decompensation." The recruits watched her fingers move with absolute certainty across the simulation equipment, adjusting, correcting, reading the malfunction the way a musician reads a score. When she stood, her eyes met Carver's. Something had shifted, something had been seen. Hardin was still on the observation platform, watching. Chapter 3. The Question. That evening, Hardin requested a private meeting. His office was austere, desk, 2 chairs, a window that overlooked the compound's eastern perimeter, where security lights were beginning to glow against the darkening sky. He gestured for Maya to sit. She remained standing. "You knew the scenario would fail," he said. "It wasn't a question." "I suspected." Her voice was level. "I recommended modifications." "You did more than recommend. You intervened at the precise moment the situation became unstable. Your hand placement on the mannequin, that's not contractor-level knowledge. That's not even standard emergency responder technique." He leaned back in his chair. "You moved like someone who had done that exact procedure under circumstances where failure meant death. Real death, not simulation." Maya looked at the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. The compound lights reflected off wet concrete, multiplying themselves like a city of duplicates. "What I did today was prevent a failure scenario from becoming a training liability," she said. "What you did was confirm something about yourself." Hardin's tone remained even. The 6 recruits on Team Delta just submitted their observation reports. They all described the same thing: a contractor who showed medical expertise that contradicted her official position. One of them, Recruit Patterson, specifically wrote that you moved like someone responding to a real emergency, not a training exercise. He pulled a file from his desk drawer. Maya recognized the telltale red border, classified material. "This file," Hardin continued, "contains your actual service record, everything before the contractor position. The reason you were placed here, and the reason your contract has always been vague." He didn't open the file. "I'm asking you directly, off the record, are you ready to stop hiding? If you're watching this story, comment where you're from. Let's see how far stories of hidden heroism can travel. Hit subscribe for more untold accounts of courage that changed everything." Chapter 4. Revelation. Maya sat down. It was a small gesture, surrendering to the chair when she had been standing, but it felt like the collapse of something structural. Hardin waited. He had learned patience from his years managing people who had forgotten how to trust. "I was field medical officer," Maya began. Her voice was different now, not harder but fuller, as if she had been speaking in mono and had suddenly shifted to stereo. 7 years, combat zones, humanitarian operations, classified deployments that I'm not cleared to discuss in detail. She paused, looking at her hands. "The last operation was in 2019. A medical convoy hit an IED. 6 personnel in my unit. I was the highest-ranking medical officer on scene." Her fingers curled into fists. Then relaxed. "One casualty was my commanding officer, Major Richardson. He had a massive abdominal wound, compartment syndrome developing. I performed an emergency field amputation to salvage his leg. Just barely got him stable enough for evacuation." Hardin watched her without interruption. "He recovered," Maya continued. "He thanked me. The command commended me. Then the review board started asking questions about whether the intervention was necessary, whether the risk was justified, whether I had exceeded my authority in a classified operation." Her jaw tightened. The answers were all yes, and yes, and yes. And they decided that meant I was a liability. "So they buried you," Hardin said quietly. "They gave me a choice: separation, or a contractor position at a remote facility where I would be useful but invisible." She looked up at him. "I took the invisible. It seemed simpler. Until today." "Until today," she repeated. Hardin opened the classified file. Inside were photographs. Maya, in uniform, younger, her face harder than it was now, commendation letters, casualty reports. The bureaucratic anatomy of a decision that had been made to discard her. "Major Richardson," Hardin said, reading from the file, "submitted a statement 3 months ago requesting that your record be reassessed. He's now serving as a medical director for the FBI's Field Operations Division. He suggested we find you. He said you were the best trauma responder he'd ever known, and that whoever had decided to hide you had made a mistake that cost lives." Maya's breath caught. "I have an offer," Hardin continued. "Official position, medical director for Tactical Training Division. Salary, benefits, clearance upgrade, authority to redesign simulation protocols. Full emergence from whatever shadow posting was hiding you." He closed the file. "It means being visible," he said. "It means people knowing your name, your history, what you can do. It means responsibility instead of concealment." Maya stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the compound lights reflecting in puddles, each one a small universe of illumination. "If I do this," she said, "those recruits will have questions." "Yes," Hardin agreed. "And I'll have to explain why I was standing in rubble, performing medical interventions on a dummy, like I'd done it for real thousands of times." "Yes," she turned back to face him. "Then I'll do it," Maya said. because hiding didn't save anyone, and I'm tired of saving myself. Chapter 5. The Testimony. The formal debrief occurred over 3 days. Each of the 6 recruits, Carver, Patterson, Liu, Morris, Keane, and Santos, was interviewed separately by a review panel. The questions were ostensibly about the exercise failure. Underneath, they were about what they had witnessed. Carver went first. When asked to describe the moment the contractor intervened, she described it with the precision of someone who had seen something that recontextualized everything she understood about professional response. She didn't hesitate, Carver said. When I told her about the respiratory compromise, there was no moment where she had to think. Her hands knew what to do. It was like watching someone remember something they'd done 1,000 times, not someone learning a procedure from a manual. Patterson was more direct. She moved like a combat medic under fire. You can't teach that. You can't simulate that. You live that, or you don't. Liu described the sound of her voice, steady, precise, teaching while her hands corrected a malfunction that shouldn't have existed. She knew exactly what was wrong before she touched anything, like she could read the equipment the way other people read a room. By the 3rd day, a pattern had emerged in the testimony. The recruits weren't describing a contractor who had overstepped. They were describing a professional whose expertise had been hidden beneath a job title that didn't match her capacity. The review panel requested Maya's presence at the final session. She walked into the conference room wearing her new title on a credential badge, Dr. M. Reeves, Medical Director, Tactical Training Division. It was the first time she had worn any designation of authority in 8 months. The weight of it was strange, not heavy, but present. "We've reviewed the statements from your team," the panel chair said. He was a retired general named Whitmore, careful and methodical. Each recruiter independently described an intervention that went beyond standard simulation protocol, and each one, when asked if they believed you were responding to a genuine emergency despite the training scenario context, said yes. He looked directly at her. That level of instinctive response, Whitmore continued, isn't taught in contractor orientation. It comes from field experience, real field experience. Your service record, which has now been cleared for discussion, confirms that assessment. He paused. My question is straightforward. Why were you hiding that capability? Maya had prepared for this, but preparation and answering were different things. Because I was told that what I had done, the decisions I made in a classified operation, had generated questions that made me a liability, she said. Her voice remained steady. My choice was disappear or fight. I chose to disappear, and in disappearing, I became invisible to people who might have needed what I could do. Like a team in crisis, Whitmore said, like these 6 recruits. Like them, Maya confirmed, and like others. How many tactical teams don't have access to adequate field medical training? How many scenarios go wrong because the expertise isn't present? How many lives could be saved if the people who had the capability weren't hiding it? The room was quiet. We're recommending your record be fully declassified, with appropriate redactions for operational security, Whitmore said. You'll be issued a formal commendation for preventing a training incident from escalating into a facility injury, and your position as medical director will be approved by the Bureau's highest levels. He stood, and the others followed. Welcome back, Dr. Reeve, he said as he shook her hand. You were gone longer than you needed to be. Chapter 6. Reconstruction. The months that followed were less about change and more about emergence. Maya worked with Hardin to redesign the entire tactical medical training protocol. She brought in field responders from active zones, created simulation scenarios based on real incident reports, and most importantly, established a culture where hiding expertise was seen as a failure of the system, not a virtue of the individual. The 6 recruits who had testified were the first class to train under her new curriculum. She taught them not just techniques, but the philosophy behind field medicine in crisis conditions, economy of motion, rapid assessment, decision-making under uncertainty. She taught them the weight of a choice made in seconds that would echo for years. One afternoon, Recruit Carver stayed after a training session. "I wanted to ask," Carver said, "what happened to the person you saved?" "The commanding officer. In the operation." Maya was resetting equipment. Her hands continued their methodical work as she answered. "He recovered," she said. "He was in physical therapy for 2 years. He lost his career as a field officer, but he moved into administration. He's doing well. He's married, has 2 children, works for the Bureau now." She looked up at Carver. "He wrote a letter of recommendation for your assignment when you applied for this division." Carver's eyes widened. "I didn't know." "He wanted you to know," Maya said, "that sometimes the people who save your life are the ones the system tries to hide. And if you encounter that, a person who's been hidden because their capability made someone uncomfortable, you need to see them. You need to name what they can do." If this story has moved you, hit the like button. It helps more people discover stories of hidden heroism and redemption. Subscribe to see more untold testimonies of people whose courage was almost buried. Chapter 7. The Invisible Cost. But emergence came with something Maya hadn't fully anticipated: the weight of being known. When she walked through the compound now, recruits recognized her. They called her Doctor. They asked questions about her deployments, her experience, the decisions she had made. Visibility, it turned out, was another kind of burden. 3 months into her new position, she received a transfer request for a tactical team responding to a hostage situation in Baltimore. They wanted field medical support. They specifically requested her. It was the first time in 8 years she'd been asked to go back into conditions that resembled real deployment. Her hands didn't shake when she read the request. Her breathing remained steady, but something in her chest, some part that had learned to be invisible, reacted with recognition. Harden found her in the medical equipment room, reviewing field supplies. "You don't have to go," he said. "You're administration now. You can send someone else." Maya didn't look up from her inventory. "I was hiding because I was afraid of being responsible for decisions again," she said quietly. "That fear doesn't disappear because I have a title now. It only goes away if I face it." "And if you face it and lose someone?" "Then that will be real," Maya said. She turned to him. "It's more real than hiding, and I think that's what I'm finally starting to understand. The 8 months I spent invisible, I was already carrying all the weight. I was just alone with it. At least now, if I have to carry it, there's a chance it might matter." She packed supplies with systematic precision. The Baltimore operation lasted 47 hours. Maya coordinated medical support for 3 casualties, 1 critical, 2 moderate. All 3 survived. She moved through that operation like she had moved through 7 years of combat zones. Present, capable, making choices in seconds that would define the rest of people's lives. When she returned to St. Helena, she was different, not harder, but more complete. The invisible woman had become someone whole again, scarred, tested, but whole. Carver was waiting at the facility entrance. "How did it go?" the recruit asked. 3 lives, Maya said simply. 3 people who will go home because decisions were made correctly under pressure. That's enough. Chapter 8. The Question That Remained. 6 months after stepping into her new position, Maya received a visitor. Major Richardson appeared in her office on a grey December afternoon. He looked smaller than he had in her memory, Or perhaps she had been younger then, had seen him as larger because she was beneath his rank. Now they were peers, both carrying the same weight of decisions made in crisis. He walked without a limp. The amputation had been averted. He had recovered the limb because her hands had known what to do in those 90 seconds. "I wanted to come in person," he said, "to tell you something and to apologize." Maya gestured for him to sit. He did carefully, the way people do when they still remember pain. "After the IED," he began, "the review boards came to me. They asked whether I thought you had exceeded your authority. I could have defended you. I was your commanding officer. My word would have carried weight." He looked at her. "I didn't. I was going through my own questions about whether the intervention had been necessary, whether I would have survived anyway, whether losing my leg would have been better than living with the guilt." "That wasn't your fault," Maya said. "No, but my silence was." Richardson's voice was rough. "And you paid the price for my doubt. You disappeared for 8 years because I couldn't defend you when it mattered. I wanted you to know that I know that, and that it's haunted me." Maya was quiet for a long moment. "You're here now," she said finally. "That's what matters. You asked them to find me. You pushed the system to see that I shouldn't have been hidden. Is that enough?" Richardson asked. "Does it balance?" "No," Maya said. "Nothing balances, but it moves in the right direction. And in the field, sometimes that's all you get, the next decision in the right direction, instead of the last one." Richardson stood to leave. At the door, he turned back. "3 of my staff members want to transfer into your division," he said. "They want to train with you. They heard about Baltimore. They want to work with someone who actually understands what it costs." After he left, Maya sat alone in her office as darkness gathered outside the window. She thought about 8 months of invisibility. She thought about the moment she had knelt in the rubble and allowed herself to be seen. She thought about Carver, Patterson, Liu, Morris, Keene, and Santos, recruits who had testified to what they witnessed. In a way, they had saved her, not by force or emergency intervention, but simply by seeing, by refusing to let expertise remain hidden, by making it impossible for her to be invisible any longer. Chapter 9. The Last Lesson. On a winter morning, Maya stood at the observation platform overlooking the training grounds, watching the newest class move through scenarios. These were advanced students, people who had been screened for field deployment, who understood that the protocols they were learning might be the difference between someone going home and someone disappearing into a classified operation that never happened. Carver was with them now, 1 month away from field assignment. She moved with the competence of someone who had integrated the lessons. She noticed what others missed. She stayed calm when protocols failed. She made decisions as if her hands already knew what her mind needed time to process. Hardin appeared beside Maya, as he had so many times over the past year. "There's another transfer request," he said. "From the Bureau's International Division. They want field medical advisors for operations in Southeast Asia. They're asking if you'll lead the selection and training process." "For how long?" Maya asked. 3 months in country, 6 months coordination stateside, rotation cycle." Maya watched Carver execute a perfect airway intervention on a simulation. Her hands were steady, her breathing was controlled. She had learned what it cost to know something and hide it, not from the instruction, but from observation, from watching someone like herself slowly emerge from invisibility. "I'll do it," Maya said, "but I want Carver and 2 others from this cohort to come with me." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Maya turned to him, "Because that's what I'm finally understanding. The reason I was supposed to be hidden wasn't that I was a liability. It was that I knew something about crisis, about choice, about the cost of saving a life that the system didn't want visible. But if you hide that knowledge, people die. If you hide the people who carry it, the system gets weaker. She looked back at the training grounds. So we don't hide anymore, Maya said. We train, we deploy, we make sure that when the next crisis happens, the next impossible choice, there are enough people who know how to stand in the pressure and do what needs doing. Not alone, not invisible, together. The winter sun broke through the clouds, illuminating the compound, the rubble maze, the observation platforms, the equipment storage buildings where this had all begun 8 months ago, when a contractor had stood in the margins, waiting to be found. Carver looked up at the observation platform. She saw Maya. She raised a hand, not quite a wave, but acknowledgement, a small gesture that meant, I see you, I understand, I'm ready. Maya raised her hand in return. Below them, the training continued. Above them, the sky cleared. And in that moment between visibility and what comes next, something essential happened. The system learned that it needed the people it had been hiding. And the hidden learned finally that being seen was stronger than any disappearance. Epilogue. They say that compassion doesn't whisper, it bears witness. And sometimes the greatest courage isn't in surviving what breaks you, but in stepping out of the shadow long enough to teach someone else that they too can be whole.